A
He
silver-lit war
is the
chamber.
one!
12
No, I
admirals stand in
swear
dress
it wasn't
armor.
me.
The
Then
walls
explain
hum with the
yourself.
cold
I was
light of a
framed.
planet
We are
about
all
to
in
declare
danger.
war.
Prove your innocence.
At the head of a long stone table, a queen, her hand resting on the hilt of a ceremonial blade, her cheekbones glowing faintly, brighter with every breath. The blade has not been drawn in 80 years. It is about to be drawn now, across the chamber. A door, a man in a gray prisoner's tunic, shackles on his wrists, a bruise on his jaw, eyes steady on hers. She has already decided she is going to kill him. A side door opens, small, quiet, an attendant, a bundle in her arms. A 14-month-old child looks across the length of the chamber. Her small body goes still. Her hand comes up, one finger out. Her mouth opens around a word she has been working on for weeks. A word no one in the room has been listening for. Cut to black. Part 1. A chamber lit in cold silver light. A woman in deep violet robes standing very still. A man in a gray prisoner's tunic. Shackles on his wrists. A bruise on his jaw. 12 high admirals around the table, all watching. The woman's hand drifted toward the ceremonial blade at her hip. Slow, deliberate. She had already decided. Her storm dusk skin, her silver hair, the faint glow along her cheekbones running brighter with each breath she took. She was going to kill him, and nothing in this chamber was going to stop her. Cut to black. A child's voice in the dark. 2 syllables. A single, small finger pointing, then white. 4 months earlier, a man who didn't know he was carrying the future of an empire, a planet already dying, and a promise made by a dying woman on a woven mat. With her last breath, to a stranger she had no reason to trust. The drawer in his quarters was the only thing on the ship he locked. Calder Mercer pulled it open. Inside, a photograph in a plastic sleeve. A woman with red hair laughing at something off-frame. Marin, beneath her photograph, 2 more. His older brother in uniform. His younger brother with a dog they had not been allowed to keep. Calder did not pick any of them up. He just looked. Because looking was what he did now. He had stopped touching them 18 months ago. Touching them made his hands shake, and his hands were the only part of him that still worked the way he needed them to work. He was 34 years old. He had been a rescue medic for 9 years. He had pulled 47 people out of crashes, fires, and the kinds of wrecks Federation paperwork called incidents because nothing else fit. He had lost 6. He remembered all 47 names in order. He recited them every morning. He recited the 6 lost ones twice. The intercom crackled. "Mercer, you up?" "Yes." "Captain wants you on the bridge." "On my way." He closed the drawer. He locked it. He walked. The Halden's lamp was a 40-meter rescue cutter. Federation search and recovery. Fast light built to fly into places real ships had stopped going. Calder knew every wall by touch. On the bridge, Captain Urell was leaning over the nav table with the kind of frown Calder had learned not to interrupt. "What have we got?" Distress signal," Urell said. "Civilian prospector, edge of the neutral zone." "How edge?" Edge. Calder looked at the projection. The blip was sitting almost on the border of Valerium space, past it technically, by about 100 kilometers. "That's not neutral." "No," Urell said. "It's not." "Then we shouldn't be there." "No," Urell said again. "We shouldn't." He looked up. Calder met his eyes. "It's a kid signal," Urell said quietly. "Encoded distress. Kids frequency. Federation school issue." Calder didn't answer right away, because there was nothing to answer. "How long to reach them?" 6 hours at full burn. Then burn." Urell nodded once. He turned to the helm. He said the words that made the engines push hard. Calder went back to the medbay. He laid out the trauma kit. He checked the rehydration packs. He counted the painkillers. He counted them again because counting was the second thing he did when he didn't want to think about Marin. The first thing was walking. The third thing was sleeping, and he hadn't slept properly in 3 days. At hour 5, the sublight engine failed. At hour 5 and 12 minutes, the secondary stabilizers went with it. At hour 5 and 14 minutes, Captain Urel was on the comm very calm, telling the four-person engineering crew to take the lifeboats now and not argue about it. "Mercer," he said, "strap in." "I can help with the boats." "Mercer, strap in. We're not making the boats." "Captain," I said, "strap in." Calder strapped in. He thought about the drawer. He thought about whether anyone would find the drawer. He thought about Marin laughing in the photograph and the way the laugh had sounded, which he had not actually heard in 4 years, but which his memory had stored as a kind of musical chord that hit every time he saw her face, and which his memory was now playing very loudly, because his memory had figured out before he had that he was about to die. The ship went into atmosphere. The ship made a sound no ship was supposed to make. The last thing he saw before everything went white was the captain's hand on his own arm, gripping, steady, the way one professional holds another when both of them already know the answer. Then white, then black, then nothing for a while. He woke to a sky he did not recognize. It was the color of an old bruise, pale lavender at the edges, bruised purple closer to where the sun was supposed to be. But the sun was not there. Or the sun was wrong. He could not tell which. He hurt. He hurt in the way that meant his body was still doing inventory and had not yet decided what to tell him. He blinked. He turned his head. The crater was small, smoking, black moss curling at the edges where the impact had cooked the ground. He was lying half against the inside curve of it, something hard under his left ribs that he was going to deal with in a minute. Not yet. First, Captain Urel. He turned his head the other way. He saw the captain. He looked away. He counted to 10. He looked back because looking away was a thing he had stopped letting himself do 6 years ago. After Marin. After he had looked away from a report and then later wished he had looked at it. The captain was gone. The body was there. The captain was not. Calder said the captain's full name out loud. Once. Quietly. He did not pray. He had stopped praying somewhere around year 3. He started inventory instead. Ribs. Cracked. 2, maybe 3. Walkable. Left ankle. Sprained. Walkable. Right boot. Split down the side. Not walkable. He was going to have to find something. Head. Bleeding above the temple. He pressed his palm against it. He counted to 30. The bleeding slowed. He kept his palm there anyway because pressure was free and he had not yet earned the right to stop bleeding. His pack. His pack was somewhere. He found it 3 meters away, halfway up the crater wall, snagged on a piece of the ship that should not have made it through atmosphere but had. He climbed. He climbed badly. He got the pack. Inside, his field kit, mostly intact. Rehydration salts, emergency nutrition gel, a water purifier the size of his thumb, a thermal blanket, a small medical pouch with the things that mattered and the things that didn't. He kept the things that mattered. He left nothing behind because there was nothing to leave behind. He climbed out of the crater. He stood on the rim and he looked at the world he had landed on. A long valley, tall green stalks gone to seed, a road running north-south through them. Dirt, worn flat by something heavier than feet. No buildings, no people, no sound, except the wind. And the wind was wrong too. It carried something Calder did not recognize. Sweet, slightly rotten, like fruit left too long in a bowl. He started walking. He walked because there was nothing else to do. He walked north because north on a planet usually had water. He found water on day 2. He drank it after running it through the purifier. He filled his canteen. He walked. On day 3, he came over a low rise and saw the first village. It was small. It was wrong. He stood at the top of the rise for 10 minutes before he understood what was wrong with it. And then he understood 3 things at once. First, the doors of every house had a strip of red cloth tied to the latch. Second, there was no smoke from any of the chimneys, and it was cold enough that there should have been. Third, the well in the center of the village had been blocked off with stones. He had seen villages like this before, on a different world, a long time ago, during his training. They had taken his class to a quarantine zone on a colony that had recovered. They had walked the empty streets. They had been told to remember what a sealed village looked like. He remembered. He stayed on the ridge. He watched. A door opened in the third house from the end. A figure came out, violet skin, thin, pale violet, almost gray. The figure was a Valerian man, maybe 60 years old, and he was carrying a bundle wrapped in cloth. He carried it to the edge of the village. He laid it down outside the gate, next to 4 other bundles. He stood there for a long time. Then he turned and walked back to his house and shut the door behind him. Calder did not go down. He went around. He walked another 12 kilometers before he stopped to drink. He drank. He sat on a rock. He said the captain's full name out loud again. Then he said the names of the 4 engineering crew. He didn't know if they had made the boats. He said their names anyway, just in case. Then he stood up, because sitting was the 4th thing he did when he didn't want to think, and he had already done the first 3 this morning. On day 5, he heard the crying. He had been walking since just after first light. The sun was a faint white smear behind a layer of cloud that hadn't moved in 2 days. The road had begun to narrow. The crying came from a house at the edge of a town whose name he could not read. Low, long, single story, roof of red-fired clay. A door painted blue, open. The door was open. He stopped at the gate, a strip of red cloth on the latch. He went in anyway, because the crying was a baby crying. And he had not heard a baby crying in 12 years. And he had stopped once 12 years ago when he had heard a baby crying outside a different door. And he had been 22 and dumb and tired, and he had walked past. And the baby had been fine, as it turned out. And the woman who had told him later that the baby had been fine had also told him that walking past was not something he should ever do again. He had not. He had carried it with him. Every door, every cry. He crossed the small front courtyard. He stepped inside. The room smelled. He breathed through his mouth. On a woven mat in the center of the room, a woman, violet skin gone gray, cheeks hollow, lips cracked, eyes half open, half fixed on the ceiling, half tracking the doorway the way eyes track when the body has stopped doing the rest of the work, but the brain is still trying. Next to her, under the same thin blanket, a baby. The baby was awake. The baby had been awake for a while. The baby's face was wet from crying that had stopped because crying had stopped working. Calder knelt. He did not touch the woman first. He touched the baby first. 2 fingers against the side of the small neck. Pulse strong. Too fast but strong. Warm. Hydrated enough. Alive in the way that mattered. Then he touched the woman. Pulse, threading, slow, almost gone. The woman's eyes found his face. Her hand came up, slow, so slow it looked like the hand of a much older person. So thin it was almost translucent in the gray light coming through the open door. The hand found his sleeve. It closed on the sleeve with what was clearly the last strength she had. Not Valerium, she said. Her standard was clumsy, each word a separate small effort. You, not Valerium. No, he said. I'm human. Her eyes closed. They opened again. Better. He didn't know what she meant. He thought she meant it was better because he wasn't sick, because his species couldn't catch what was killing hers, because he could leave this room without the red cloth coming for him. He found out later she meant something different. Take her, the woman said. Where away? Away from what? The red cloth, the ships, the harbor, north. Whose baby is she? The woman's eyes shifted. For a second, they were very clear. For a second, Calder felt something move in his chest that was going to take him a long time to understand. She is, the woman said. She stopped. She swallowed. She tried again. She is important. What's her name? Her name is. The woman's throat worked. Her hand on his sleeve loosened. Her hand slid down to the mat. The woman who had not finished her sentence closed her eyes one last time. She did not open them. Calder sat on the floor of that house for what was either a minute or 20 minutes. He could not have said. The baby had stopped crying. The baby was watching his face with an expression he had seen exactly once before in his career. A patient who had figured out at the age of 7 that the adults in the room had not yet decided what to do, and that her job while they decided was to be small enough not to interrupt them. Calder said quietly, "Hi." The baby did not move. "I'm Calder." The baby blinked. "I'm going to pick you up, okay?" The baby blinked again. He picked her up. She weighed almost nothing. She settled against the curve of his neck the way human babies settled. He noted it with the clinical part of his brain that did not turn off even now. Evolution had solved the same problem twice on 2 different worlds. He let the thought go. She was warm. She was warmer than he had expected a Valerian baby to be. He stood up. He walked through the small house, a coal box in the corner. He opened it, a clay jar of something that smelled like milk and a bag of dried fruit. He took both. He took the woman's shoes from beside the door because his right boot was split, and the woman's shoes were leather and just slightly too big, and they would do. He took a wrap of clean cloth from a shelf above the cooking stove because the baby was wearing a tunic that had not been changed in too long, and he was going to need to change it. He took on his way out a small wooden carving from the top of a low shelf. He didn't know why. It was a bird, small, carved from pale wood, wings tucked, worn smooth at the head from a thumb that had been there a lot. He put it in his pocket. He stopped at the door of the house. He turned and he looked back at the woman on the mat. "I don't know your name," he said, "but I'm going to do what you asked." He stepped outside. He shut the door behind him. He retied the strip of red cloth on the latch. He did not know why he did that either. He walked north. The baby's small palms settled against his collarbone. Her breathing went slow, slower. She fell asleep on the 2nd kilometer because she had been awake for a long time and because someone was finally walking. And someone walking sometimes is the only thing a small person needs. Calder kept walking. He didn't look back, because looking back was the thing he had also stopped doing 6 years ago. He walked until the sun went down. He found a stone kiln half collapsed in a field. He went inside. He built a small fire. He warmed the milk. He fed the baby. She took it. She watched his face the whole time. He slept that night with her tucked inside his jacket against his sternum. He did not dream. For the first time in 2 years, he did not dream. 300 light years away. A chamber lined in cold silver stone. A queen reading a report. Queen Aelira of the Valerium Dominion sat at her writing desk in the private wing of the Eastern Tower. The desk was small. The chair was old. She had refused 6 years earlier to take the larger one her late husband had used. She had said at the time it was because the smaller chair fit better. She had meant something else. The report in her hands was 4 pages long. She had read it twice. She read it a third time. She set it down. She did not move for a long moment. Outside, the wind was moving in the garden below. A wind chime made of beaten bronze rang once and stopped. She picked up the small silver bell at the edge of the desk. She rang it once. Her chief of intelligence came through the door. He was a thin Valerian man with white markings along his jaw and the kind of stillness in his eyes that came from a life of bringing other people bad news. Majesty, tell me again. The colony has been under soft quarantine for 38 days. The pathogen has spread faster than projected. The estate in the southern coastal region was hit on day 21. The nursemaid Nessa stopped reporting on day 25. The guard rotation was lost on day 27. The estate was breached on day 31. By whom? Unknown. You wrote that the child is gone. Yes, Majesty. You wrote that the child was taken. Yet, by whom? The intelligence chief paused. Majesty, he said carefully, we have a witness. A field worker outside the estate saw a man carrying a child north along the coastal road on day 32. What kind of man? Not Valerium. Elara did not move. A human, the chief said. The silence in the chamber was the silence of a room that had just changed temperature without anyone touching the controls. Federation, we cannot yet confirm. But you suspect, Majesty. You suspect. We suspect. Aelira stood. She walked to the window. She looked at the garden where her late husband had once planted a tree she had not been able to bring herself to cut down, even though it had been dying for 2 years. She put her palm flat against the cold glass. She thought about her daughter, 14 months old, wispy silver hair, the pale lavender of a child whose markings had not yet come in. She had not held her in 9 months. She had agreed to the old custom because the old custom had kept the royal line alive for 800 years. She had agreed because she had been told a queen who did not know where her child was could not be coerced. She had been told this by her own father before he died. She turned from the window. Her hand left a small mark of moisture on the glass. The mark faded. Mobilize the 3rd and 9th battle groups, she said. Majesty, you heard me. Yes, Majesty. Send word to the High Admirals. Council in 6 hours. Yes, Majesty. And Chief, Majesty. Find me the human. The chief bowed. The chief left. Aelira stood alone in the chamber for a long time. Outside in the garden, the wind chime rang twice and stopped. She picked up the report. She walked to the small fireplace at the far wall. She did not throw the report in. She held it. She held it until her hand stopped shaking. Then she set it down again, carefully, on the desk, lined up with the edge. Because if her hand was going to be the hand that ended a piece 80 years old, that hand was not going to shake when it did. Calder walked. The baby slept against his chest. She woke every few hours. She fussed when she was hungry. She did not cry the way human babies cried with a full-throated, world-ending insistence. She made small, careful sounds, as if she had been taught very early that crying did not bring anyone. He hated that about her. He hated it the way a medic hates a symptom that tells him exactly what kind of room the patient had been in before they reached him. He fed her warm milk from the jar. He fed her tiny amounts of his emergency nutrition gel mashed with water. He tested it on his own tongue first. He waited an hour. He tried a fingertip's worth on her. He watched her face. She did not react badly. He gave her a little more. She kept it down. Day 2 of the walk. He started talking to her. He didn't plan to. It happened the way these things happen. He was crossing a stream. The water was knee-deep and cold. He was holding her up against his shoulder with one hand, and he heard himself say, hang on, we're almost across. Hang on, that's it. And he kept saying things, because the sound of his own voice was not the worst sound in the world, and the silence on this planet was. You're heavy for a small person, he said. She blinked at him. I know, he said. I'm sorry. Bad joke. She blinked again. You don't laugh much. That's okay. I don't either. Marin used to laugh at my jokes. She was being polite. I figured that out about a year in. The baby watched his mouth. Marin was my wife. She died. About 6 years ago. He paused. He thought about whether he was about to start crying in the middle of a stream on a dying alien planet while holding a baby that didn't speak any language he knew. He decided he was not. "It happens," he said. "People die. You're going to figure that out at some point. I'm sorry. I'd lie to you about it if I thought it would help. It wouldn't." He crossed the stream. He sat down on the other side. He held her up in front of him, both hands under her small arms. He looked at her face. "You need a name," he said. She didn't have a name. She had been about to have a name. The woman on the mat had been about to say it, and had not. And the name was now a sentence with no end. Calder thought about that for a minute. "I can't call you anything that's actually a name," he said. "Because if I give you a name and it turns out to be the wrong name, you're going to grow up thinking you were called the wrong thing. And I'm not doing that to you." She blinked. "So I'm going to call you something temporary, just for the road." He thought. He looked at the small wooden carving in his pocket. He'd taken it out that morning to look at it. He had not yet put it back. "Little bird," he said. She blinked. "Yeah," he said. "I think so. Little bird until your mother can tell me what your actual name is." "Deal." She blinked. "I'm going to take that as a yes." He stood up. He kept walking. On day 3, he tried to make her smile. He didn't know why this became the project, but the not crying was getting to him, and the not smiling was worse. Because a baby that did not smile was a baby who had learned that smiling did not get the room to smile back. He made faces. He made bad faces. He made the face Marin had told him he made when he was trying too hard. The face she had laughed at the one and only time he had attempted to be charming on a first date. The face he had retired from his face forever afterward. The face he was on the side of an alien road on day 3 of a walk that was probably going to kill him, attempting again because nothing else was working. Little Bird watched him. On day 4 in the late afternoon, with the sun gone faint white behind the cloud layer, he made a face that was either the 18th or 19th one he had made that day, and Little Bird's mouth twitched. The twitch was on one side only. It looked startled, like a muscle she had forgotten she had. But it was a smile. Calder sat down on a rock. He put his face in one hand. He sat there for about a minute. Little Bird in his other arm watched the top of his head with the patient, interested gravity of a small person who had decided that the larger person was doing something important, and that her job was to wait until it was done. He lifted his head. He looked at her. "Okay," he said. His voice was steadier than he expected it to be. "Okay, you're going to be fine." She did not smile again that day. She smiled twice on day 5. By day 6, she was attempting it whenever he made eye contact. By day 7, she had a sound. Not a laugh exactly. Closer to a small hum at the back of her throat when she was pleased. Calder caught himself on day 7 making the bad faces just to hear the small hum. He stopped on the side of the road on day 7 and he held her up and he said, "Listen, just so you know, the road is going to get harder. I'm doing my best. I'm not always going to know what I'm doing. I'm going to mess this up at least once. Probably more. Marin used to say I was a slow learner with my hands and a fast learner with my head. And the trick was figuring out which one a situation needed." He held her closer. "This is the kind of situation I'm not sure about. So I'm telling you in advance. I'm going to keep trying. Okay." Little Bird patted his collarbone with one small palm. She had not done that before. Calder looked at the palm. He looked at her face. He didn't say anything else for a while. He walked. On day 9, he came to the crossroads. It was nothing. A dirt road meeting a dirt road. A wooden post in the center with 3 carved markings he could not read. He was crossing the post when the rider came out of the brush. He was on him before Calder could move. A Valerian man, older, maybe 60, pale violet skin, white markings along the cheekbones that had faded with age, a rifle across the saddle of his riding beast. The beast was a 4-shouldered gray thing with one bad eye and a mouth that worked in a slow circle when it stopped walking. The man pulled the beast up at 5 paces. He looked at Calder. He looked at the bundle against Calder's chest. The rifle did not come up, but the rifle was right there. Calder did not move. He held his free hand out to the side, palm open. "Sir?" The man said nothing. "I'm not armed." "You," the man said. His standard was thick, clear enough. "What is that?" "A baby." "Who's—" "A woman who died." The man's eyes did not leave Calder's face. "Where?" 8 days south of here, in a town. I don't know the name. Red cloth on every gate." The man was quiet for a long minute. He looked at Little Bird. Little Bird, who had been sleeping, woke up. She opened her eyes. She looked at the man on the riding beast. She did not make a sound. The man's face did something Calder could not read. "Where are you going?" the man said. "North." "Why, she told me to." "The woman who died?" "Yes." "She told you north?" "Yes." "Did she tell you why?" "No." The man looked at the baby again. He looked at the road behind Calder. He looked at the road ahead of Calder. He swung down from the riding beast. He was slow doing it, like his hip didn't want to. He landed on the dirt, and he stood there for a second to let the hip catch up. Then he walked to a saddlebag. He opened it. He came back with two things: a packet wrapped in waxed cloth, dried fruit, Calder could smell it, and a smaller bundle, herbs tied with thread. He could smell those too, faintly sweet, faintly bitter. He held them out. "Take." "Sir, I don't have anything to trade." "Take." Calder took them. He didn't know what else to do. "The fruit is for you," the man said. "The herbs are for the child." "For what?" "Fever. Boil a small amount in clean water, 1 pinch, not more." "Why are you giving me this?" The man looked at him for a long time. Calder thought for a second the man was going to say something serious, something that might explain a lot of things at once, but the man just shook his head. "Because she is small," he said, "and you are tired. And my wife gave birth to our daughter 3 weeks ago. And I am going home now to find out if they are still alive." Calder couldn't speak for a second. He cleared his throat. He said the only thing he had: "Thank you." The man swung back onto the riding beast. He did it the same slow way he had gotten down, the hip arguing. He looked down at Calder. "At the third river, turn east. There is a town called Saravat. The fishermen there are not afraid of strangers. They may take you across the strait." "Thank you." "After the strait, I do not know." "Thank you." "Stop saying thank you." "Yes, sir." The man looked at the baby one last time. "That is a very small child," he said, "to be on a very long road." "I know. Whoever she belongs to, I hope they are worth what you are doing for her." He nudged the beast. The beast turned south. The man rode away without looking back. Calder stood at the crossroads for a long minute. He looked at the packet of dried fruit in his hand. He looked at the small bundle of herbs. He tucked the herbs into the inside pocket of his jacket, against his chest, next to where Little Bird's head rested. He did not know yet that he was going to need them. Soon. He looked north. He walked. In the council chamber of the Valerium Dominion, 6 hours after Queen Alira had read the report, 12 high admirals stood around the table. The map above the table rotated, slowly. The border between Dominion space and Federation space glowing along the rotating line. Queen Alira sat at the head of the table. The chief of intelligence stood at her right. "Begin," she said. He began. He laid out the timeline he had given her in private. He laid out the witness. He laid out the dead nursemaid. He laid out the breached estate. And then he laid out something he had not given her in private. "A second witness has come forward." Elira looked at him. When? Within the last hour. Why was this not in the report? It was not confirmed when the report was written. Is it confirmed now? It is. Then say it. The second witness is a customs officer at the orbital station above Meriden. He has identified the human as Federation Search and Recovery, a medic. The man was reported missing 6 days ago when his ship crashed somewhere on the planet. His name. We have not yet been given his name. The Federation has refused our query. They have refused our query. They have. The chamber went very still. Admiral Drevin, an old admiral with a face like worn stone, spoke from across the table. Majesty. Speak! If the Federation is refusing the query, the Federation has something to hide. Possibly. Or the Federation does not know the name. Possibly. Or the Federation is buying time. Possibly. The intelligence chief did not look at Drevin. He looked at the Queen. Majesty, he said carefully, the pattern fits. What pattern? A coordinated extraction, crash inserted under the cover of a distress signal, medic on the ground, estate breached, child removed, carried north toward a harbor town with known Federation sympathizers. He paused. Majesty, this is not a crash. This was an operation. Elira looked at the map. She looked at the rotating border. She looked at her hand on the edge of the table, which was steady, which was not going to be allowed to shake. She thought about her daughter. She thought about Nessa. She thought about the small estate by the sea where her daughter had been kept safe for 9 months, and where at some point a man had walked through a door, killed an old nursemaid, and taken her child out into a quarantine zone. She believed the intelligence chief. She believed him because he had never been wrong before. She did not yet know he was wrong now. She did not know he was being lied to by a source paid by someone else, someone she had not yet thought to suspect. She stood, mobilized the 3rd and 9th battle groups to the border. Majesty, move the 7th into reserve. Majesty, send a closed communique to the Federation. Demand the return of the child. 24 hours. Majesty, after 24 hours. The admirals waited. Elira's hand on the table did not shake. After 24 hours, we cross. The admirals bowed. The admirals filed out. The intelligence chief filed out with them. The Queen stood alone in the chamber. The map kept rotating. Below it, somewhere on a road on a dying planet, a man she had never heard of was walking north with her daughter asleep against his chest. The rain started that night. It came in off the Western Sea, a cold front from a current that had shifted 3 years earlier and had not shifted back. Calder felt it on the back of his neck. He pulled his jacket tighter around the baby. He kept walking because there was nowhere to stop, because every village he passed had red cloth at the gate, because somewhere ahead of him a queen had given an order he did not yet know about, because somewhere behind him a ship was being made ready. And the only thing standing between that war and the start of it was a 14-month-old child whose name he did not know. The rain fell harder. Calder walked. Little Bird slept. The first kilometer was the easiest. Part 2. Day 11, he found the school. He had stopped counting kilometers 2 days earlier. Counting kilometers was a thing a person did when they thought knowing the number was going to help. He had stopped thinking the number was going to help. He counted days instead. Days were honest. The school sat a quarter mile off the road in a field of tall green stalks gone to seed without anyone to cut them. One story, fired clay brick, peaked roof, a painted sign over the door he couldn't read. The door was latched from the outside, which meant whoever had left it had expected to come back, which meant no one had come back. He stopped at the edge of the field. He stood there for a long minute with Little Bird breathing against his collarbone. Then he crossed the field. He undid the latch. Rusted. It fought him for a second. Gave. He stepped inside. The room was small, 15 small chairs stacked in a corner, a teacher's desk with a half-empty cup on it. The cup had grown a skin. The skin had cracked. The cup had been there a long time. A shelf of children's books along the back wall. He stood in the doorway and he breathed in. The room smelled like clay and old paper and a faint wet that meant a roof somewhere had let in rain last winter. He closed the door behind him. He latched it from the inside. It was the first time in 11 days he had been inside a room that belonged to a building. Not a kiln, not a cave, not a half-collapsed barn. A room. He sat down on the floor. Right there, by the door. Boots still on. Little Bird turned her head against his neck. She made the small hum. He laughed. Just a breath. Not a real laugh. But it surprised him. "Yeah," he said. "I know. We're inside." He sat there for 10 minutes. Then he made himself get up. He went to the teacher's stove in the corner. Iron, black, a small pile of cut wood in a basket beside it. The wood was dry, the wood had been waiting. He built a small fire. He warmed water from his canteen. He warmed the milk from the clay jar. The last of it. He had been rationing. He fed Little Bird at the teacher's desk. He sat in the teacher's chair. She sat on his knee. She drank with both small hands wrapped around the cloth he had wrapped around the warm cup. She finished. She looked at him. She made the hum twice. Calder shook his head. "You drive a hard bargain," he said. She blinked. "All right, one more thing." He went to the shelf. He pulled down a book. The cover was painted. A river, fish in the river, a small creature on the bank. The creature had 4 legs and round ears and a long tail, and Calder did not know what it was. He brought the book back to the desk. He opened it. The pages were paper, thick. The way books made for small hands were thick. There were pictures and there were words. The words were in Valerium script that Calder couldn't read. He showed her the first page. "That," he said, "is a river." She looked. "And that," he said, "is a fish." She looked. He turned the page. "That is a flower, I think. Maybe a vegetable. I'm going to say flower." She made the hum. "You're agreeing with me," he said. "I appreciate that." He turned another page. This page had the 4-legged creature on it, the one from the cover. Long body, round ears, watching something out of frame. Little Bird sat up. She had not sat up before. She put her small palm flat against the page. She made a sound. It was a sound. It was not a hum. It was 2 syllables. Soft. Round. The first consonant, a sound Calder didn't quite have in his mouth. The second, a vowel he recognized. He froze. He looked down at her. She looked up at him. She made the sound again. She was naming the animal. She was naming it for him. He didn't know the name of the animal. He didn't know any words in her language. But she was looking at the picture and making a word with her mouth and looking at him to see if he had heard. He had heard. "Yeah," he said. His voice came out wrong. "I heard you. I heard you. I don't know what it is, but I heard you." She made the sound a third time. Then she put her head against his chest, like she had completed a task, like she had been working on it for a while and was glad to be done. Calder sat in the teacher's chair for a long time. He held her. He didn't move. His face did a thing he wasn't going to think about. When he could move again, he stood up. He carried her in one arm. He went to the teacher's desk. He found a stub of pencil in the drawer. He pulled a piece of paper from the top of a small stack. He wrote in standard on the paper, "Thank you." He put the paper on the desk. He pulled one ration bar from his pack, the second to last he had. He put it next to the paper. He didn't know why he did either thing. He just did not want to take a roof and a fire and a moment of his life back without leaving something. Even in a room that had been left by people he was never going to meet. He slept that night on the floor next to the stove. Little Bird slept on his chest. Outside, the cold rain that had started 2 nights earlier kept coming. Inside, the small fire kept the room warm enough. He dreamed. For the first time since Marin died, he dreamed. He dreamed of a kitchen with sunlight coming through a window, and a woman's voice asking him a question. And he could not hear the question, but he could hear that it was Marin, and he could hear that she was patient about him not hearing the question, and he could hear that she was going to ask again. He woke at first light. He stood at the door of the school for a second before he opened it. He looked back at the room. He said quietly, "Whoever you were, thank you." He left. He latched the door behind him, from the outside, the way it had been. He went back to the road. He walked. Day 13. The rain stopped. The sun came out as a faint white smear behind a layer of cloud. He came around a bend in the road, and there was a small fire burning 50 meters off the path, smoke rising thin. He stopped. He stepped off the road into the tall grass. He waited. A voice, a woman's voice, speaking in Valerium, then a man's voice, lower, calmer, a baby crying. Calder's chest went tight, because crying meant someone was alive to take care of crying, and it meant someone had been crying long enough that it had gone past the careful sounds. He moved closer. He kept the grass between himself and the fire. He looked through the stalks. A small clearing, a young Valerium couple. The man may be 25, the woman may be the same. The woman was very pregnant, 6 months, 7. He couldn't tell with Valerium pregnancies. The crying was not from the woman. The crying was from a baby in her arms, smaller than little bird, maybe 4 months, wrapped in a stained cloth. The man was kneeling at the fire. He was boiling water in a small clay pot. He was looking at the woman. He looked tired. Calder watched for a minute. He looked for the second person. There wasn't a second person. There was the man, the woman, the baby, and nothing else. He stepped out of the grass. The man saw him first. The man stood, fast. He had a knife in his hand. Calder hadn't seen where the knife came from. The knife was small, not a hunting knife, a kitchen knife. Calder stopped at 15 paces. He held his free hand out to the side. He did not move. "Sir," he said. The man stared. The woman behind him made a sound, a breath in, sharp. She had seen Little Bird. The man hadn't. Calder watched the man's eyes move to the bundle against his chest. The man's hand on the knife loosened. Not all the way, but loosened. "You," the man said. His standard was better than the rider's. Cleaner. Almost no accent. "Yes." "Human." "Yes." "What are you doing here?" "Walking." "To where?" "North." "Why?" "A woman died. She asked me to take the baby north." The man's eyes went back to Little Bird. The man's mouth did something. The woman behind him said something in Valerium. "Quiet." The man answered. "Quiet." Calder couldn't follow it. The man turned back to him. "My wife says you should come closer. I don't want to make anything harder for you. She said come closer." Calder came closer. He stopped at 5 paces. The man looked at him. The man looked at Little Bird. The man's face did the thing the rider's face had done at the crossroads. Calder had figured out by now what the thing meant. It meant they were recognizing something. He didn't know what. He had figured out that not knowing was probably safer than knowing. "How long has she been crying?" Calder asked. He meant the man's baby, not Little Bird. 2 days. "What's wrong?" "Fever." "Bad." The man's jaw worked. "Bad enough." Calder did the thing he did. He went to the small kitchen knife not in the man's hand and crossed it off the list of things he had to worry about. He stepped to the woman. She did not flinch. She watched him. "I'm a medic," he said. "Federation. Search and recovery. Can I look?" The woman looked at her husband. Her husband nodded. Calder shifted Little Bird to one arm. He knelt in the grass beside the woman. He held out two fingers. He said, "May I?" She nodded. He pressed the two fingers very lightly against the small neck of the baby in her arms. Pulse. Strong, too fast, but strong. He pressed the back of his fingers to the small forehead. Warm. Warmer than warm, but not dangerous yet. He sat back on his heels. "Okay," he said. "Okay. She's hot. Not as hot as you think she is. Valerium baseline temperature is a little higher than humans. I forget that sometimes." The woman looked at him. "You've treated us before. On a colony. 5 years ago. There was a mining accident. Cross-species ward. I learned a few things." "What can we do?" "You're already doing it. The water in the pot. You boil a cloth in it. You let the cloth cool. You put the cool cloth on her chest and her forehead. You change it every 20 minutes. You keep her drinking, even small amounts, especially small amounts." The woman's eyes filled. "That is what we have been doing." "Then that is what to keep doing." He hesitated. He reached into his jacket. He pulled out the small bundle of herbs the rider had given him. He held it out. The man stepped forward. Fast. The man's eyes went wide. "Where did you get that?" "A man on a riding beast, 4 days ago, at a crossroads. He gave it to me. He said, for fever." "He gave it to you?" "He gave it to me." The man took the bundle, carefully, almost reverently. He smelled it. He looked at his wife. He said in standards so Calder could understand, "It is the right kind." "What is it?" Calder asked. "It is called Nirvana. It grows in the old hill country. It is hard to find now. Most of it was burned in the second purge of the bad winter. We have not been able to get any in months, even before the sickness." "What does it do?" "It works against the kind of fever your daughter has." He did not correct the man. He had not corrected anyone in a week. "How much do I use?" "For a baby the size, 3 small leaves, crushed in boiling water until the water turns the color of weak tea. Then you let it cool. You give it a teaspoon at a time, every 2 hours, no more." "How do I know it's working?" "You will know in 6 hours. Either the fever breaks or it does not." Calder swallowed. The man held the bundle back out to him. Calder shook his head. "Keep it. It is yours. You have a baby with a fever right now. I have a baby with no fever yet. You take it. I'll find more." "You will not find more." "Then I won't find more. You take it. You give her what she needs, right now." The man stared. The wife behind him said something. Quiet. The man closed his eyes for a second. The man opened his eyes. He kept 3 small leaves. He held the rest of the bundle out to Calder. "You take this, for your child. If she gets sick, you will need it. The road north is long, and the cold rain is not done. That's most of it. You gave us 3 leaves of Nirvana. You may have saved my daughter's life. Take the rest, or I do not take any of it." Calder took it. He folded it back into his jacket, against his sternum, next to where Little Bird's head rested. He stood up. The woman looked up at him. "What is her name?" she said. "I don't know." "You don't know. The woman who gave her to me died before she could say it." The woman closed her eyes. She opened them. She said she has a strong face. "I know. She will know her name when she sees it. Babies know." "I know." The woman reached out. She put her hand, very lightly, on Little Bird's back. She said something in Valerium. Soft, a small phrase. The way a person says a small phrase that is not to anyone in the room. The way a person says a blessing. Little Bird made the hum. The woman almost laughed. She did not, but almost. Calder stood up. He looked at the man. The man said, "There is a town called Saravat, 6 days north. Do not go through it. Go around it. There is a Dominion ship in the harbor." "How do you know?" "My brother sends word." "Where is he?" "He is dead. He sent word before he died." Calder did not say anything for a second. "There is a smaller fishing village, down the coast, south of Saravat, 6 hours walk past it. The fishermen there are old. Some of them are old enough to remember when the border was different. Talk to them. Do not go to Saravat." "Okay." "Go." Calder went. He looked back once. The woman was bent over her baby with a cloth dipped in cool water. The man was kneeling beside her with 3 small leaves in his palm. The fire was still burning. Calder turned away. He walked north. He did not look back at it again. 3 nights later. The rain. It started in the afternoon. By dark it was coming sideways. He had been climbing a ridge when it began. He came down the other side fast. He found a stone kiln in a field, half collapsed, the same kind he had slept in on day 1. He crawled inside. He set Little Bird down for the first time in 3 days. She made the unhappy sound. She had figured out by then that being put down was the bad thing. "I know," he said. "I'm sorry, I have to build a fire." He built a fire. It took longer than it should have. His hands were cold. The wood was wet. He used the inside of his thermal blanket as a windbreak. The fire caught. He picked Little Bird back up. He held her close. She was warm. She was very warm. He pressed the back of his hand to her forehead. He pressed the inside of his wrist to her cheek. He swore. Quiet. Once. He did not panic. Panic was not allowed. He had learned on a lot of bad roads that panic was a thing you did later. After. In the bathroom of a transport station. After the patient was stable. After someone else had taken over. He was the only one in the kiln. There was no one to take over. So no panic. He pulled out the bundle of Nirvana. He pulled out 3 small leaves. He crushed them between his palms. He boiled water in the small tin cup from his field kit. He dropped the leaves in. He watched the water turn the color of weak tea. He pulled it off the fire. He let it cool. He did all of this with one hand because his other hand was holding Little Bird against his chest. He held her against his bare chest, under his shirt, under the thermal blanket. He pulled the blanket up over both their heads. He had read once years ago in a survival manual that body heat was the oldest medicine in the world. He had thought at the time that was an exaggeration. He did not think that anymore. The tea cooled. He dipped his finger in it. He touched it to her lips. She turned her head away. "Hey," he said. "Hey, no. Little Bird, you have to. Just a little. Just a teaspoon's worth." She turned her head back. She was watching his face. He could see her watching his face even in the firelight. Her eyes were too big. Her eyes had been too big for hours. He touched the tea to her lips again. She drank. Half a teaspoon. He let her stop. "Good," he said. "Good, that's it. That's all for now." He held her. He waited. The rain came down on the roof of the kiln. The fire crackled. Little Bird burned in his arms. He said the names. He said them like he said them every morning in his quarters on the Halden's lamp. 47 names, in the order he had pulled them. He got to 45. He said her name, Marin. He had not said it out loud to anyone in 4 years. Not to a friend, not to a counselor, not to himself. He said it now quietly, against Little Bird's silver wisp of hair. Her name was Marin, he said. Little Bird's eyes moved. She had red hair. She was the kind of person who you would meet at a wedding and you would say, "Yes, of course she's married to him. He is the lucky one, and you would not be wrong." He smiled. He did not know he was smiling. The smile was not for Little Bird. She was. She had a way of looking at me, like she had been waiting for me to figure something out for a few minutes, and like she was going to wait as long as I needed her to wait, because she had decided I was worth waiting for. He breathed. She died because of a stupid thing. A car, an accident. Not even the kind of accident anyone could have done anything about. She was driving home from her sister's house. A driver crossed a line. He had been drinking. He lived. She didn't. He stopped. He gave little Bird another half teaspoon of the tea. She took it. He went on. I had two brothers. My older brother died first, 8 years before Marin. He was a pilot, Federation pilot. He died over a colony I'd never heard of, saving a transport full of people I'd never heard of. I never met any of the people he saved. I never asked. I didn't want to know if any of them had been worth him. He stopped again. He pressed his palm to little Bird's forehead, still hot, but not hotter. He breathed. My younger brother died last, 2 years after Marin. He was. He was the kind of person who, he laughed. He had a laugh. I haven't been able to hear it in my head for a long time. He stopped. He looked at the fire. He waited. He waited because waiting was the fifth thing he did when he didn't want to think, and he was already on 5. Little Bird's hand came up. It found his collarbone. It rested. His laugh it was high, for a man, almost a giggle. He never grew out of it. He used to, sometimes he would, start laughing in the middle of something serious, and he wouldn't be able to stop. And it would. It would set everyone else off. Because his laugh it was contagious, like a yawn, except a laugh. He stopped. He listened. He heard it. He heard it in his head, for the first time in years. The high, helpless giggle of his younger brother. From the kitchen of a house Calder had not been inside since the funeral. Calder closed his eyes. He held little Bird closer. He would have loved you, he said. He loved babies. He didn't have any. He wanted some. He didn't get to. Little Bird made the hum. Quiet. Small. Yeah, Calder said. I know. The rain kept falling. The fire kept burning. He gave her tea every 2 hours. He did not sleep. He did not even pretend to sleep. He talked to her about Marin, about his brothers, about the apple tree in the backyard of the house he had grown up in, about a dog his family had owned that had lived 17 years and had been allowed to sleep on the bed despite the rule because by the end she could not get down on her own, about the first patient he had ever saved, a woman who had been pulled out of a wrecked freighter with a broken hip and who had hugged him in the hospital 3 weeks later and had not let go for almost a full minute. He told her things he had not told anyone. He told her because she could not understand. He told her because that was on a lot of bad roads the only reason a person ever said anything. Around dawn, her fever broke. He felt it before he saw it. A change in her skin against his sternum, a small damp exhale against his throat. The kind of exhale a body makes when it is done. He sat there for another hour. He did not move. He was afraid if he moved his legs would not work. When the sun came up, thin, white, through a gap in the cloud, he looked down. Little Bird was asleep. Her small palm was flat on his sternum. Her small mouth was open against his shirt. She was warm, the right kind of warm. He pressed his palm to her forehead. Normal. He let his head fall back against the inside of the kiln. He laughed, just a breath, the way he had laughed in the schoolhouse, but longer. He cried for about a minute. He did not make any noise. He just let it happen. Then he wiped his face. He stood up. His legs worked. He kept walking. In the council chamber, 6 days after Illyra's order, the honor guard captain stood at attention. Majesty, we have reached Saravat. And the human did not enter the harbor. He saw the corvette. Yes, Majesty, we believe so. Then where? We are sweeping the smaller villages along the southern coast. The road work parties have set up checkpoints. The fishermen have been told. Told what? That a human and a Valerium child are being sought. That the human is dangerous. That the child must be recovered. Elira looked at the map above the table. The map was no longer rotating. It was holding steady on Meriden, the southern coast. The fishing villages were small red dots. There were more red dots than she had expected. How many? 83 villages on the southern coast. And we are searching all of them. By tomorrow nightfall, Majesty. By tomorrow nightfall. She nodded. The honor guard captain bowed. He left. Elira stood alone at the map. Outside, somewhere in the city, a temple bell rang. She did not know it was for an old fisherman who had died that morning in his sleep. She did not know the fisherman had told his granddaughter the day before that he hoped to live long enough to see the queen do the right thing. She did not know his granddaughter had buried him in the small cemetery behind the temple. She did not know the granddaughter was going to be one of the people who 2 months later would stand in a crowd and listen to the queen tell the truth. She did not know any of that. She put her hand on the map. She covered the southern coast with her palm. She kept it there for a long time. Day 18. He came down off the last ridge before the coast. He saw the small fishing village. He saw the 2 men in dark violet armor walking through it. He stepped back behind a tree. He stayed there for 2 hours. He watched. He counted 3 soldiers in the village, then 4. They were going house to house, slowly. They were not running. They were not finding what they were looking for. He moved south. 6 hours walk past the village. The man in the forest had said, 6 hours walk past. He walked 7. He walked 8. Just before dark, he came to a smaller cluster of houses. 6, maybe 7. Right on a shingle beach. Boats with patched sails pulled up on the sand. Smoke from 2 of the chimneys. He stopped at the edge of the houses. He held Little Bird close. He walked into the village. He went to the first house with smoke. He knocked. The door opened. An old woman, smaller than he had expected, bent slightly at the shoulders, eyes very dark, skin a faded violet that had gone almost gray at the edges, hair white. She looked at him. She looked at Little Bird. She did not move. She did not speak. She just looked. For a long time. Then she stepped back from the door. She said, "Come in." He came in. He sat at her table. She lit a small oil lamp. She put a clay pot on the stove. She did not speak again until she had set a cup of something hot in front of him. The cup was tea, real tea, the kind he had not had in 2 weeks. He almost cried again. He did not. He drank. He held the cup with one hand and Little Bird with the other. The old woman sat down across from him. She watched him drink. "My name is Marsa," she said. "Calder." "Calder?" "Yes. That is a quiet name." "Yes." She nodded. She looked at Little Bird. She did not ask him anything about her. She just looked at her. Little Bird looked back. After a minute, Marsa said, "I have seen that face before." He waited. In an image. A long time ago. On a public broadcast. From the capital. I was old then. I am older now. But I do not forget faces. Especially that kind of face. Calder did not say anything. He set the cup down. He reached for the small wooden carving in his pocket. The one he had taken from the dying woman's house. He did not know why he reached for it. He held it in his hand under the table. The wood was warm from his pocket. "I am not going to ask you anything," Marsa said. "I am going to tell you what I am going to do." "Okay. I am going to take you across the strait, tonight. There is no moon tonight. My boat has a black sail. The Dominion ships do not patrol the eastern current after dark because the current is bad and they have not bothered to learn it. I have been sailing the current for 41 years. I have money. I do not want your money. Take it. No. Why? She looked at him. Her dark eyes were very steady. Because, she said, I am old, and I am tired of being afraid of the people who do not come when we need them, and of pretending that being quiet keeps us safe. It has not kept us safe. It has only kept us quiet. She paused. And because I had a daughter once, who would have been about the age of the woman who handed you that child? And I do not know what happened to her, but I know that someone somewhere was the last person to hold her, and I hope that person was kind. Calder put the cup down. He looked at her for a long time. He said finally, thank you. Stop saying thank you. I have been told that before. It is good advice. She stood up. Eat. There is bread in the cupboard. There is fish in the pot. I will be ready at second moonrise. There is no moon tonight. There is no white moon. There is a small red moon at the second hour. We leave then. She left him at the table. He ate. Little Bird ate with him. She slept in his arm for an hour. He was almost dozing himself when Marcia came back into the room and said, now. They went. The black sail came down off the mast. The boat ran east on a current that pulled hard. Marcia stood at the tiller with one hand. With the other hand, she kept a small lantern shielded under her cloak. Calder sat in the bottom of the boat with Little Bird against his chest. The stars were close. He had not seen stars in 2 weeks. They had been there. The cloud cover had been there too. Tonight the sky was clear. Little Bird against his chest opened her eyes. She looked up at the sky. She made a sound. A new sound. Not a hum. Not the 2 syllables from the schoolhouse. A long, soft surprise sound. Like she had not known there were stars. Calder looked up with her. He pointed. Stars, he said. She made the sound again. He held her closer. He looked at the back of Marcia at the tiller. Her cloak, the wind in her white hair, the small red moon coming up over the water on the other side. He thought distantly that he was probably going to remember this for the rest of his life. He did not know yet how much longer the rest of his life was going to last. He thought it was going to last a while. He was wrong about that. In a way, but not in the way he was afraid of. The crossing took 3 hours. When they reached the other shore, a shingle beach, the same kind of beach, a different coast. Marcia helped him out of the boat. She held the boat steady against the small waves with one hand. She looked at him. In the dark, she said, whoever you are, thank you. He didn't know what she was thanking him for. He found out later. Don't say thank you, he said. She laughed, quiet. It was the only time he heard her laugh. He stood on the beach. He watched her push the boat back out. He watched the black sail go up. He watched the boat go small. He turned and he walked inland. The Federation emergency beacon was 200 kilometers from the coast. It took him 6 more days. He ate the last of the dried fruit on day 4. He ate the last of his nutrition gel on day 5. On day 6, he was running on water in the kind of stubbornness that did not have a good name in any language. Little Bird, who had been fine since the fever broke, started to cry on day 6. Not the careful crying, real crying, the full-throated world-ending kind. He did not know why. He thought maybe she had finally figured out that the road had been too long. He thought maybe she was reaching for someone she could not name. He walked faster. He held her. He talked to her the whole way. He reached the beacon at sundown. A small metal pole, a blinking white light, a panel with 3 buttons. He pressed the middle button. He sat down in the short blue-green grass next to the beacon. He held Little Bird in his lap. She was still crying, quieter now, tired. I'm going to find the people who love you, he said. I'm going to find them, I promise. She put her small palm against his collarbone. She stopped crying. She watched his face. She did not smile. But her face was the face she had been making since the schoolhouse. the face that meant she had decided he was a person. He sat there with her for 40 minutes. The Federation shuttle came down out of the dark. It came down before the Valerium scouts did. That was the only piece of luck he had on that world. It was not enough luck. The shuttle pilot opened the door. He saw Calder. He saw a little bird. He stopped. He stood in the doorway. He said very quietly, "Oh no." "What?" "I'm not going to ask. We're going to go. Get in, sir, now." Calder got in. He held Little Bird. The shuttle went up. Little Bird against his chest fell asleep before they cleared the atmosphere. She slept the whole way to the cutter. The cutter was bigger than the Halden's lamp had been. A Federation frigate. Sharp. Clean. Calder did not know the name. The infirmary doctor took Little Bird. Gently. Calder did not want to let her go. He let her go. The doctor was a woman in a white coat. She had a kind face. She said, "We are going to feed her properly and clean her up and weigh her. She will be right next door. You can see her in an hour, I promise." He believed her. He let go. A nurse took him to a room. They cut his hair. He had not noticed how long it had gotten. They gave him a shower. They gave him clean clothes. They gave him a real bed. He sat on the edge of the bed. He did not lie down. He sat there for 10 minutes before he understood why he was not lying down. He was waiting. He was waiting for the captain to come in. Because someone was going to come in. Because the shuttle pilot's face had been the kind of face that meant someone was coming. The captain came in 20 minutes later. She was tall. Federation gray uniform, iron in her hair. Her name tag said Halloran. She closed the door behind her. She sat in the chair across from the bed. She looked at him for a long minute. "Mercer," she said. "Captain, do you have any idea what you have done?" "I saved a baby." She closed her eyes for a second. She opened them. "Mercer, you saved the heir apparent of the Valerium Dominion." He didn't speak. "Her name is Neela." He didn't speak. "Her mother is Queen Alara. And Queen Alara has spent the last 26 days telling every admiral in her fleet that someone, possibly the Federation, possibly the Independents, possibly a rogue cell we have not yet identified, murdered her daughter's nursemaid in the middle of a medical quarantine and stole her child." He didn't speak. "The Dominion has moved 3 battle groups to the border. We are approximately 1 diplomatic mistake away from a war we cannot win." He still didn't speak. He couldn't. He was looking at the wall behind her shoulder. He was thinking, distantly, about the name Neela. Her name was Neela. He had been right. He had been right not to give her a name, because he would have given her the wrong one. Because the right one had been waiting for her this whole time, in the mouth of a mother on a planet she had not seen since she was 3 weeks old. Halloran was still talking. "I believe you," she said. "I want you to understand that. I believe you. I have read the shuttle pilot's report. I have read the medical assessment. The baby is unharmed. She is thriving. You did right by her. Every single day, you did right by her. Thank you. The Dominion will not believe me. The Dominion will want her back. And the Dominion will want someone to punish for what they think was done to her. And since you are the only human who touched her," she did not finish the sentence. He finished it for her. "That someone is going to be me." "Yes." He nodded. He looked at his hands. His hands were not shaking. He noted it. He took it as a small private mercy. "What happens now," he said. "The Dominion scouts will reach this cutter in approximately 6 hours. I am going to stand down. I am going to negotiate one thing. I am going to negotiate that you be transferred alive. I will get it. I will not get much else." "Where will she go?" "Home. With me." Halloran shook her head. "No." He breathed. He breathed in. He breathed out. "Can I see her?" "You can see her. Now. Now." He stood up. He followed Halloran out of the room. The infirmary was 3 doors down. Neela was in a small bassinet beside a low bed. The doctor had cleaned her. Her silver wisp of hair had been brushed. She was in a small blue gown. She saw him. She made the hum, loud, insistent. She held both her small arms out. He went to her. He picked her up. She put her small palm flat against his sternum, like she had done in the kiln, like she had been doing since the schoolhouse. She made the hum twice, then once. Then she fell asleep. He stood there holding her for 15 minutes. Halloran did not interrupt. When the honor guard came aboard the cutter 6 hours later, Calder was still holding Neela. The honor guard officer was a tall Valerian woman in dress armor. She came into the infirmary alone. The other two soldiers waited outside. She looked at Calder. She looked at Nyla. Her face did not move, but her eyes did something Calder caught. He had been catching this expression for 19 days. He had figured out by now that it meant the person looking at Neela was recognizing her. It meant the person was a Valerian person who had served the crown. It meant the person had not expected to find the princess alive. The officer stepped forward. She held out her arms. Calder did not move for a second. Then he kissed the top of Neela's silver wispy hair. He said very quietly against her head, "Your name is Neela. They told me. I should have known. I should have known you would have a real name." He set her into the officer's arms. Neela woke up. Neela saw the officer's face. Neela looked over the officer's shoulder, back at Calder. Neela started crying, the full-throated kind, the world-ending kind. The kind she had cried on day 6 of the walk to the beacon when she had been reaching for someone she could not name. The officer's mouth tightened. The officer turned and walked out of the infirmary. The crying went down the corridor. Calder stood in the infirmary. He stood there for a long time. He did not move. When the Federation guards came in to put the shackles on him, he held out his wrists. He didn't look at them. He was still listening for the crying. He could not hear it anymore. He could not hear anything. The facility was on a moon he was never told the name of. A room, a cot, a toilet behind a screen, a shower every 3rd day. 2 guards on a 12-hour rotation who did not speak to him except to tell him to stand against the wall when the door opened. 4 months. He learned the texture of the wall. He learned the rhythm of the lights. He learned that day 83 was the day the second guard's accent shifted, which meant a new rotation had come up from a different region, which meant somewhere in the Dominion the seasons had changed. He did his push-ups. He stretched. He recited the names. He recited them every morning. 47 names, in the order he had pulled them. He recited the 6 lost ones twice. He had a new ritual now, at the end, after Marin, after his younger brother. He said Neela, once, quiet. He had thought the first morning he said it that he was going to feel sad. He did not feel sad. He felt something else. He had not figured out what to call it yet. He was not in a hurry to figure it out. He had time. A Valerian medic came twice a week. A woman, older, white at the temples, pale violet skin, faded markings along her cheekbones. The markings were the kind that came in late and faded early on Valerian women who spent their lives in service. She was a medic. He could see it the moment she walked in. He had been one for 9 years. The way she carried her bag, the way she put it down, the way she did not look at him until she had taken stock of the room first. He recognized all of it. Her name was Rennick. She did not introduce herself for the first 3 visits. On the 4th visit, she said, without looking up from her pad, "My name is Rennick. I am not here as a friend. I am here because someone in this building has to make sure you do not die on us. Please answer the questions truthfully." Okay. She asked about food. She asked about sleep. She asked about pain. He answered honestly. She wrote it down. She left. She came back 3 days later. She asked the same questions. She wrote it down. She left. The 5th visit. She stayed 10 extra minutes. She asked a question that was not on the form. The baby. What about her? Was she well when you last saw her? He looked at Rennick. He looked at her for a long time. He thought about whether to answer. He answered. She was healthy. She was fed. She was sleeping. She had a small cough, but it was drying up. She didn't like the honor guard officer who took her. She was going to be fine as long as someone held her for a while after. Rennick wrote it down. Rennick did not show him what she wrote. A week later, on visit 8, she came in with her bag. She also came in with a folded piece of paper. She set the paper on the small table. She tapped it twice with one finger. She said nothing. She did her examination. She wrote her notes. She started to leave. At the door, without turning, she said, "I am not going to tell you why I brought that. You may look at it, or you may not. Either is fine. I will not be back for 3 days." She left. He looked at the folded paper. He did not pick it up for an hour. When he did, he unfolded it carefully. The way a person unfolds something that has been carried in a pocket. The paper had a child's drawing on it. A child who was learning to draw. Lines that wanted to be circles. Circles that wanted to be people. In the middle of the page, a figure. The figure had dark scribbles for hair, 2 dots for eyes, a small line for a mouth. In the center of the figure's chest, a small round shape, round and a little crooked, the way a child draws a sun or a moon or a flower, a small mark next to the figure. He could not read Valerium script, but he had seen Rennick write the date at the top of his medical chart twice a week for 2 months. The mark next to the figure was the Valerium symbol for the number 1, then a symbol he did not know, then the symbol for the number 5. Rennick came back 3 days later. She did her examination. She wrote her notes. At the door, without turning, she said, "The mark is the symbol for the days of the week." She drew the figure on the first day. She has redrawn it every 5th day since. She does not yet have words. She has the drawing. The drawing is the only word she has for the man with the dark hair. The man with the dark hair is the only person she has not stopped asking about. Her mother knows. Her mother has been told. Her mother has not yet responded. Calder did not move. He stood in the middle of his cell with the drawing in his hand. Rennick said, "I cannot help you. I want you to understand that. But I will not hurt you either. That is as much as any of us in this building have been offering anyone lately. Take it as the small thing it is." She left. The door closed. The lock engaged. Calder stood in the middle of the cell. He held the drawing. His hand did not shake. He looked at the small round shape in the center of the figure's chest. He understood slowly what it was. It was her palm. The drawing was her hand on his sternum. She was telling everyone in the only language she had where her place was. His knees went. He went down to the floor of the cell. He sat with his back against the cot. He held the drawing flat on his knees. He looked at it. He did not cry. He did not move. He sat there until the lights changed. He sat there until the second guard of the day shift came on. He sat there until the lights changed again. He held the drawing. He looked at the small round shape. He thought quietly, "She has not forgotten. She remembers. 300 light years away." The queen of the Valerium Dominion stood at the window of the small writing room in the Eastern Tower. In her hand, a folded piece of paper. A piece of paper she had been holding for a week. The piece of paper had a child's drawing on it. The drawing was a figure with dark scribbles for hair, 2 dots for eyes, a small round shape in the center of the chest. The queen had been told what the drawing meant. She had not yet decided what to do with what she had been told. She held the paper. She looked at the garden. She did not move. Outside, the wind chime rang. Once, twice. It did not ring a third time. Elira closed the paper. She put it in the inside pocket of her robe, against her own sternum. She walked out of the writing room. She did not yet know what she was going to do. She knew only that the order she had given, The order to cross the border, the order she had held off day after day for reasons she had not said out loud even to herself, was going to have to be answered this week. She walked down the corridor toward the council chamber. The high admirals were already waiting. Part 3 day 117. The lights came on early. Calder was already awake. He had been awake since the lights last went off. He had not slept. He had been holding the drawing. The drawing was folded into the inside pocket of his tunic, against his sternum, where the warmth from his body had softened the creases, where the paper had started to feel less like paper and more like a piece of cloth. He did not take it out. He did not need to. The door opened. 2 guards, a clean gray tunic in the first one's hand. Put it on. He put it on. Hands. He gave them his hands. The harness closed around his wrists. It hummed. Not painful, not gentle. He walked. He did not ask where. He had stopped asking around day 40. 3 corridors, a courtyard with the sky he had not seen in 4 months. The sky was wrong in a way he could not name. He looked up at it. He looked away. A shuttle bay. A shuttle. He sat where they put him. The harness clicked into the bench. The shuttle lifted. He looked out the small window. The moon dropped away. He watched it shrink. He had not known the moon was that small. He had spent 4 months inside something that from far enough away was a dot in the dark. 2 days at speed. He did not know it was 2 days. He learned later. A cruiser, a docking corridor, a second shuttle, a palace station that orbited a violet world he had only ever seen in cadet briefings. His knees almost went when he saw it through the viewport. Because the briefings had been small images, this was not a small image. It was a planet, a whole planet. He had been carrying her across a world, and she had a planet. He had not understood until that second how much he had not understood. He breathed. He counted the names. He got to 20 before they took him off the shuttle. A lift, a long corridor, cold silver light, a door he did not see open, a door he was through before he registered it. A chamber. The chamber was lit in cold silver light. The chamber was the chamber from the cold open. He stood between the 2 guards. At the far end, 12 high admirals around the table, all looking at him. A queen. She was standing at the head of the table. She was wearing a dark violet robe. Her storm dusk skin, her silver hair, the faint glow along her cheekbones running a little brighter than the room. She was looking at him. Her hand was at her side. Her hand was very still. He met her eyes. He did not look at the horizon past her left ear the way he had practiced. He met her eyes. He had stopped practicing on day 90. The queen lifted 2 fingers. The chamber quieted. She was about to speak. A side door opened. The small one. The one that connected to the royal apartments. A palace attendant. A small woman. Carrying a bundle. The attendant froze at the threshold. "Forgive me, Majesty." She would not settle. "She has been calling for you all morning." Lyra was already half out of her seat. Her hand was already moving to wave the attendant back. The baby in the attendant's arms did not look at her mother. She looked past her mother, across the length of the council chamber. Calder saw her face go still, the way her face had gone still in the doorway of the dying woman's house. He saw her small body lock. He saw her small hand come up, 1 finger out, the way a child points at something she wants to name for the first time. Her mouth opened, around a word she had been working on for weeks, a word no one in the room had been listening for. "Mom!" The word landed. "That's him." The chamber stopped. It was not a silence. It was the room arriving at a conclusion it had not been told it was about to reach. The kind of silence that comes when a whole council understands all at once that they have been wrong about something, and they have not yet figured out how wrong. Queen Lyra did not move. She was standing with one hand braced on the table. Her weight shifted for a step she was no longer taking. Her face went through three things. The last one settled around her mouth. Cold, slow, a glacier deciding which direction to go. Her eyes had not left her daughter. They moved. They moved the way a gun moves, across the chamber, onto Calder. Calder's own face had already broken. He was looking at the baby like a man who had been holding his breath for 4 months and had finally been allowed to let it out. Admiral Drevin, who was old and who had loved the Queen's late husband like a brother, said one word: Majesty. The Queen raised her hand. He stopped. She did not look at him. She looked at her daughter. She looked at the small finger. She looked at the face the finger was pointing at. She said, "Leave us." Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "All of you now except the prisoner and my daughter." No one moved. Now. They moved. The chair to the Queen's right scraped first, then the chair beside it, then the chair beside that. 12 high admirals walked out of a war council they had been building for 26 days. The attendant moved toward the door she had come in through. The Queen said without looking up, "Bring her here." The attendant brought her. The Queen took her daughter into her arms. The baby protested. Once. A small sound. Her face turned back over her mother's shoulder, toward Calder. Calder did not move. The two guards on either side of him had not yet been dismissed. The Queen looked at the harness on his wrists. She made a small gesture. The guards looked at each other. The one on the left activated the release. The harness went slack. Calder rubbed his wrists. He did not know he was doing it. He had been doing it absently for weeks whenever the harness came off for a shower. Out! The guards went out. The door closed. The chamber held 3 people. The Queen at the head of the table, the baby on her mother's shoulder, the man in the gray tunic at the far end. The Queen said, "Sit." He looked around for a chair. There was a low carved chair along the wall, placed there for junior attendants. He had not seen it from where he had been standing. He walked to it. He sat down. The Queen did not sit in her own chair. She sat on the edge of the council table, which was not protocol, which was the first broken piece of protocol in a chamber built to contain nothing but protocol. The baby on her shoulder turned her head. She watched him. She did not reach for him. She had figured out somewhere in the last 100 days that reaching did not always work. But she watched. Elira said, "Tell me." He swallowed. "Tell you what?" "Everything." He told her. He started at the crash. He did not start at Marin in the drawer. He did not start at the photograph. He started at the crash because the crash was the first thing she would not have known, and he understood by then what telling everything meant. He told her about the captain's hand on his arm, about the crater, about the smell of the moss. He told her about the village with the red cloth on every gate. He told her about the house with the open door, the blue paint, the mat, the woman whose name he did not know. Her name was Nessa, the Queen said. She did not interrupt him after that. He told her about the woman's hand on his sleeve, about the words "better," about the sentence the woman had not finished. The Queen closed her eyes. She kept them closed for a long second. She opened them. He told her about the wooden bird in his pocket. He did not have it on him. It had been taken with the rest of his things on day 1 of the cell, but he told her about it anyway. He told her about the milk, the shoes. He told her about teaching Little Bird to smile again, about day 4, about the lopsided, startled twitch. The Queen's mouth did something. She did not let it complete. He told her about the man on the riding beast, about the dried fruit, about the herbs. He told her about the schoolhouse, about the book of pictures, about the 4-legged animal with round ears, about Little Bird's first word. The Queen looked at her daughter. She said in standard, "She has the word," for the kitten of an old hill country. It is the first word every Valerian child learns. From the picture books. Calder nodded. He had not known. He had heard her say it. He told her about the young couple, about the woman's pregnancy, about the fevered baby, about the nirvana. He told her about giving most of it back. Alira closed her eyes again, longer this time. When she opened them, they were wet. She did not let it go further than that. He told her about the kiln in the rain. He did not tell her everything. He told her enough. He told her about saying the names. He told her about saying his wife's name out loud for the first time in 4 years. He told her the wife's name was Marin. Marin, the queen said. She said it carefully, the way a person says a name in a language they do not speak. He told her about the fever breaking before dawn. He told her about Marsa, about the boat with the black sail, about the small red moon. He told her about the beacon, about the captain on the cutter, about hearing the name Neela for the first time, sitting on the edge of a bed in a clean room, in a cutter named something he could not remember now, about handing her to the honor guard officer. He paused there. He looked at the floor. She cried. The queen did not speak. She had not cried like that the entire walk. She cried like that when I set her down. I know. He looked up. You know. The honor guard officer reported it. The report has been on my desk for 16 weeks. Oh. I did not read it for 10 weeks. I read it last week. I have read it several times this week. Oh. He went back to the floor. He told her about the cell. He told her about Rennick. He told her about the drawing. Rennick gave it to you. Yes. On her own. Yes. The queen looked at the door of the chamber for a moment. She said quietly, Rennick will be promoted. She turned back to him. Continue. That's all of it. That is not all of it. That's the parts that matter. She looked at him for a long moment. She said, why are you telling it like a maintenance log? He blinked. Like what? You walked a sick child 400 kilometers across a quarantine planet alone, with a fever in the middle of it, and you have told me about it the way another medic would tell me about a routine transport. It was just walking. It was not just walking. It was walking, one foot, then another the whole time. The queen sat there. She looked at him. She looked at her daughter on her shoulder. She said, what do you want? What? What do you want as payment for what you have done? I want to go home. That is it. That is it. You do not want land. No. You do not want title. No. You do not want the gratitude of the Dominion, carved into a wall, in a language you cannot read. No. Why? He thought about it. He had not thought about it before. He had thought about staying alive in the cell. He had not thought about what came after staying alive. The baby on the queen's shoulder reached out. A small palm landed on his knee. She left it there. She looked up at his face, the way she had looked up at his face from his chest in the schoolhouse, the way that meant she was checking on something. He put his own hand, very slowly, over hers. Her palm was warm, warmer than any Valerian thing he had ever touched. He said, because I didn't do it for a reward. Then why did you do it? There was a baby on a mat and a woman was dying. And she asked me, that's the whole story. He looked at the queen. If I take anything for it, it stops being that story. Go on. It becomes a different story. I don't want the different story. I want the one I lived through. The queen did not speak for a long time. She looked at her daughter's hand on his knee. She looked at his hand on her daughter's hand. She looked at his face. She said very quietly, that is a very human answer. I'm a very human person. She almost laughed. She did not laugh, but almost. She stood. The baby protested again. Her small palm came off his knee. The queen shifted her daughter to her hip. She walked to the doors of the chamber. She stood with her hand on the carved frame. She did not open them yet. She said without turning, "I am about to do something my admirals will not forgive me for easily. I want you to understand that what happens in the next hour will not be about you. It will be about a war that is not going to happen, and a treaty that is going to have to be built out of almost nothing, and a story I am going to have to tell my people that they will not believe at first. Okay, you will be part of that story. I cannot let you go home immediately. Okay, I need you for a little while longer, not as a prisoner, as a witness. Will you stay?" "Yes." "You did not even ask how long." "However long it takes. If it keeps people from dying, I will stay." She turned her head. She looked at him over her shoulder. The luminescent tracery across her cheekbones was a little brighter than when he had walked in. He would learn later. It got brighter when she felt something she was trying not to show. She did not say anything. She opened the doors. The admirals came back in. They walked the stiff, formal walk of officers who had been standing in a corridor pretending not to listen. They found their queen seated at the head of the council table, her daughter asleep on her shoulder, the human prisoner, seated in a low chair, wrists free, hands folded, watching the floor. The queen waited until the last admiral had taken his place. She said, "The prisoner is not a prisoner." She let that sit. "The charges are withdrawn." She let that sit. "The war is withdrawn." Admiral Drevin inhaled. He did not speak. The queen looked at him. "Admiral Drevin, you will stand down the 3rd and 9th battle groups by the end of this day." "Majesty." "Admiral Keshran, you will draft a closed communique to the Federation, requesting a full diplomatic contact, under peace protocols." A younger admiral on the far side of the table nodded once. "The rest of you will go to your quarters and consider at length the quality of the intelligence that was placed on this table 26 days ago, and the quality of the recommendations you built on top of it." She paused. "There will be consequences. For some of you." A pause. "There will be none for those of you who have the sense to help me repair this." Admiral Draven stepped forward. "Majesty, the fleet is mobilized. There will be questions. There will be answers." "From whom?" "From me." She looked around the table. "This man carried my daughter on foot, across 400 kilometers of a quarantined world. He did it alone. He did it without asking anything for it. He did it while this council was building a case for the destruction of his people. We were wrong. I was wrong. I will say so, publicly. You will stand behind me when I do." Admiral Draven looked at her. His face was old, stone. He bowed his head. It was the bow of a man who had been waiting for years to be pulled off a course he had been too disciplined to question on his own. The others one by one followed. The younger admiral, Keshran, bowed the deepest, with something like relief. They left. The queen sat in her chair for a long time. Her daughter slept on her shoulder. The map above the council table was still rotating, slowly, showing the border she had been about to burn. She reached out. She touched the control. The map faded. The chamber without the map looked smaller and older and less like a place where wars were decided. Calder. It was the first time she had used his name. Still here. "Come sit with me." He stood up. He walked across the chamber. He sat down in the chair next to her. The one Admiral Drevin had been standing behind. It was the first time a human had ever sat at that table. Neither of them mentioned it. The baby on the queen's shoulder, without waking, reached out a small violet hand and laid it. As if in sleep, she had remembered something. On Calder's sleeve. The queen looked at her daughter's hand. She said quietly, "She will not forget you." She'll forget. She's little. She will not forget. We do not forget. It is the thing about us. Her first memories will be of you for the rest of her life. When she tries to remember before she could remember, she will find your face. I thought you should know. He did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing, which had always been his best skill. 6 weeks later, the Hall of Names. Calder had been dreading it for 3 of those weeks. The Queen had warned him in advance. He would be presented at the Hall of Names, an old chamber in the royal complex, where for 600 years the Dominion had entered the names of those who had served the crown beyond expectation. A human name had never been entered. There was, as far as anyone knew, no established protocol for entering one. There was, as it turned out, a High Lord named Corvin who objected loudly to the whole idea, and who by all accounts intended to object loudly in person. The hall was full, a long stone room, high ceiling, the walls covered in names, carved letters in old Valerian script. Thousands of them. Most of them had been dead for hundreds of years. The Queen wore a plain white robe. She had told Calder the night before that the white robe was the one she wore when she did not want what she was doing to be mistaken for performance. She had said it the way a person tells a friend something they have already decided. Neela stood at her mother's hip, a small version of the same white robe, holding the edge of her mother's sleeve in one small fist, watching the room with the gravity of a child who knew, without knowing how, that something important was happening and that she had been allowed to see it. Calder stood at the center of the hall. He wore a gray tunic. The palace had tried to put him in ceremonial robes that morning. He had said quietly that if the Dominion was going to enter his name, it should enter the name of the man who had actually walked the road. And that man had been wearing gray. The palace had taken the gray tunic out of storage. It was clean, pressed, new stitching at the shoulders, but it was gray. The clerk of the hall raised the small bronze rod that started the ceremony. High Lord Corvin stepped forward, tall, thin, older than Aelira. Pale violet skin with the kind of bright cheekbone markings that came in early on Valerian men born to old families. His robe was deep crimson with silver trim. He had practiced what he was going to say. Calder could see that in his face. "Majesty," his voice carried, "I must object. I expected you would, Lord Corvin. Proceed. This human saved the heir. This is not in dispute. But the Hall of Names is not a reward ledger. It is a record of service. To the Dominion. He is not of the Dominion. He cannot have served it. To enter his name here is to dilute the meaning of the hall for every name already entered." The hall waited. Aelira looked at him. She did not answer. Calder, standing at the center, watched the moment tilt. He had been ready for this. He spoke before the Queen could. "Lord Corvin." The High Lord turned. He had not expected the human to speak. He had assumed the human would let the Queen handle him. "You're right." The hall stopped. Aelira did not move. "I'm not of the Dominion. I walked that road as a human. I'd appreciate if you didn't enter my name." Corvin stared. "I didn't ask to be here. I came because I was told to. I'm going home soon. I don't want a wall. If you've got a way to honor the woman who died on that mat in my arms, enter hers instead." The hall was so still, Calder could hear the small breath Neela took at her mother's hip. "Her name was Nessa. She saved your princess. I just carried her." The hall stayed still. High Lord Corvin looked at Calder for a long moment. Calder watched the man's face work, a man whose objection had been built on the assumption that the human would want the wall, had not built any wall for if the human did not. The High Lord turned to the Queen. He bowed, differently this time, lower. "Majesty, I withdraw my objection. With the court's leave, I move that Nessa's name be entered today, and that the human's name be entered, on the day he chooses, by the method he chooses, for the reasons he chooses, if he ever chooses. So moved. The queen's voice was very quiet. So entered. Nessa's name was carved into the wall that afternoon. A clean section. New. Just above eye level. Easy to find. The clerk of the hall worked with a small chisel and a small mallet. The room was quiet enough for everyone to hear each tap. Calder watched the carving. He thought about a woman on a mat. He thought about her hand on his sleeve. He thought about the wooden bird in his pocket that someone in the palace he did not know who had found in his confiscated belongings and quietly returned to his quarters 2 weeks earlier. He thought she would have liked very much that her name was up there. His name was never entered. He walked out of the hall unrecorded, which was in the end exactly the way he had wanted it, which the Valerian people, when they heard the story, understood better than the court had. Within a year it had become a saying among them. The human who refused his own name was the reason the peace held. They were not entirely wrong. He stayed. He had said he would. He was not a man who changed his word. He stayed first as a witness, then as the treaty took shape as something harder to name. He was given quarters in the palace, not grand ones, a set of rooms near the royal apartments, looking out over a small courtyard with a fountain in it. He was given a translator, then slowly stopped needing one. He was given a role, at his request. That had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with medicine. The Dominion had never had a resident human specialist in cross-species pediatric trauma. They did now. He worked long days. He got used to eating violet food. He learned without ever quite deciding to how to read the play of color in a Valerian face, the way he had once read the play of expression in a human one. He learned the words for things he had not had words for before. He learned the Valerian word for the kitten of the old hill country, the first word every Valerian child learned. From the picture books, he learned the word for the herb that brought down a fever in a baby. He learned the word for the strait Marsa had carried him across. He sent a letter to Marsa, the first month he was at the palace, a short letter, in standard because his Valerian was not yet good enough. He did not sign it with his name. He signed it, the man you carried. He never knew if she received it. She received it. She did not write back. She showed it to her granddaughter, who showed it to the local temple keeper, who put it in a small wooden box on a shelf above the door of the small temple. It is still there. The queen whose name in private became Alira and not Majesty had not married again after the death of her husband 6 years before. She did not marry Calder either. It was not that kind of story. What happened between them was slower and less announced, and in some ways more durable. It started as these things do with long conversations in a garden. In the second year, after dinner, outside. The garden had a low wall along one side that looked out over the city. They walked. She told him about her husband. She told him things she had not told anyone since he died. He listened. He did not say, "I lost someone too." He had learned by then, from a lot of bad roads, that comparing losses was a way of stopping the other person from finishing. So he listened. He listened until she was done. She put her hand on his sleeve when she was done. Briefly. Then she took it off. She said, "Thank you for letting me say it." He said, "Thank you for trusting me with it." They walked back to the palace. A year later, year 3, a balcony off the east wing, evening. The light was the wrong light, the kind of light that makes a person say something they would not say in any other light. The air smelled like the ocean. She had not allowed herself to go back to the ocean since the day her daughter's nurse had died on one. But the wind that night had come off it, and it had brought the smell. She put her hand on his on the low stone wall. She did not look at him. He did not look at her. They both watched the city. After a long minute, she said, "I was going to kill you." "I know." "I was. I had decided." "I know." "I would have." "I know." She turned her head. He turned his. She said, "I am very glad I did not." He said, "Me too." She made the sound that was almost a laugh. She did not laugh, but almost. Her hand stayed on his. His hand turned over. Her hand fit into it. They stood there for a long time. That was as much as anyone in the palace ever saw of it. It was enough. The Valerian people, who had been prepared to tolerate a human advisor, found themselves over the slow course of 2 years tolerating a human at the queen's elbow at formal functions. By the third year, they had stopped tolerating it. They had started, without quite admitting it, to expect it. Neela grew. She walked, then she ran. She was a small, fierce person who had a very particular habit. Every morning before her lessons, she came to Calder's quarters. She climbed onto his bed. She put her small palm flat against his sternum. She did not say anything for about a minute. Her mother had told her once that this was where she had slept as a baby when she was sick. Neela had taken the information the way small children take information that feels important. She had decided that the place on her human's chest was her place, and that checking on it every morning was a thing she needed to do in order for the rest of the day to work. Calder, for his part, had stopped trying to explain to anyone, even himself, what it felt like to have that small palm there every morning. He just let it happen. He had learned, on a lot of roads, what to let happen. Year 11, the day Nyla turned 12. There was a small private party in the Queen's chambers. A larger formal reception was scheduled for the next day at the palace. For dignitaries, the small private party was for the people who mattered. Calder, Aelira, two of Aelira's old friends from before she was queen. Admiral Drevin, who had become in his late 70s the kind of grandfather figure to Neela that Aelira had not expected him to become, and which Aelira had not stopped him from becoming. The widow of Neela's old tutor, a Valerian girl named Yel, who was Neela's age and who had been her closest friend since they were both 4. Cake. Real cake. Calder had taught the palace baker how to make a Federation-style birthday cake. With layers, with sugar frosting, with 12 small candles. Neela blew them out. Yel laughed. Aelira watched. Calder cut the cake. Later, after everyone else had gone home, after Yel had been collected by her father, after Drevin had hugged Neela and said 12 the way an old man says 12, when he cannot quite believe 12 has happened. After the queen had kissed her daughter on the top of her dark, almost adult hair. Calder said, "Want to go for a walk?" Neela said, "Yes." Aelira said, "Both of you." Calder said, "Both of us." Aelira said, "Take her to the beach." He looked at her. She looked at him. She said, "She has been asking for a year. She does not yet know how to ask, but she has been asking." He said, "Okay." They flew north the next morning. A small palace shuttle. 2 pilots. Discreet. Aelira had arranged it before the party. The northern coast was rocky. The beach was a strip of gray pebbles between cliffs. The water was wrong-colored for an earth ocean, a deep green-blue, almost teal. The wind off it was cold. Neela wore a coat, hands in pockets, eyes on the tide line. She was as tall as his collarbone now. Her hair had gone from silver to a darker adult shade. The markings on her cheekbones had begun to come in, faint, pale lavender, just under the surface. She walked beside him. For a long time, neither of them said anything. Then she said, without turning her head, "Father." It was not the first time she had said it. It was one of the first times she had said it, when they were alone, with nothing else going on. "Yes." "Why did you not take the name?" "In the hall." "Yes." He thought about it for a long time. He had known the question was coming, the way a man knows a tide is coming. "Because putting my name on a wall would have made me important to that story." "You are important to that story." "I'm not." "You are." "I'm not, little bird." She stopped walking. She turned to face him. He stopped. She said, "Why?" He looked at her. He looked at the tide. He looked back at her. He said, Because the woman who died on the mat was important. The man on the riding beast whose wife had just given birth was important. The couple in the forest with the sick baby, they were important. He paused. The shipping clerk's wife I never met. Who said you had your father's eyes? My father had your eyes. He stopped. He had not heard that before. Your mother said that. My mother. When? Last year, we were looking at an old picture of him, she said. Your father had eyes like Calder, the same way of holding still. He had to look away for a second. He looked at the tide. He said, I didn't know him. You would have liked him. I know. He would have liked you. I'd hope so. She watched his face. She said, finish. Finish what? Why you didn't take the name? He took a breath. Marsa was important. The boat with the black sail, Rennick with the drawing, your mother, listening to a 14-month-old child point, in a chamber full of men who had decided to start a war. All of those people were important. Me being on the wall would have pushed them off the wall. I didn't want that. Neela walked a few more steps. She did not look at him. She said very quietly, the shipping clerk's wife. You never told me about her. I wasn't sure you were old enough. I am. I know. He told her on the gray beach the whole of it. The cart with the one-eyed beast, the gray-green scrap of cloth, the 9-year-old boy with the stick, the sentence the older boy had translated from his mother. Neela listened, the way her mother listened, with a quality of attention that did not look like anything. Until you realize after that she had not looked away from your face once, when he was done. She stood for a minute, looking out at the water. She said, Father, yes. When I am older, yes. I am going to find that family. Little bird, I am going to find every person who helped you carry me. I am going to thank them. Little bird, I mean it. He looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. He said, I know you do. She took his hand. He let her. The wind off the water lifted a strand of her darkening hair across her cheek. She did not move to fix it. She held his hand. He held hers back. They stood there, not talking, watching the tide come in over the gray pebbles, watching it pull back, watching it come in again. Behind them in a chamber 300 light years away, a sentence a 14-month-old girl had spoken in a single afternoon had begun the slow work of becoming the origin line in a piece that would outlast everyone in this story. A piece that had come in the end from one person recognizing another, and the small girl who had pointed at him in a council chamber and said it out loud. Calder looked down at the hand in his, almost as big as his hand now. Not quite. He thought she would be taller than her mother. He thought she had already grown up. He thought he had been very lucky to be allowed to watch it happen. He did not say any of that. He just held her hand, and they walked back up the gray beach, together.